What's up guys, this is Biz. Welcome back to another one of my SMOD Mapadd tutorials. Today we're going over another intermediate map adding technique, but this one is going to improve your map add game a lot. Today we're talking about a handy little entity called the point server command. This is something I've been using since, you could probably look back to the Outbreak map adds from like 2008 or 9, whenever that was. And I'm not sure if it gets a lot of use generally, but this thing, trust me, once you hear about what it does, you're going to start using it all the time. So I've set up a handy little scenario here. We've got a little box named Sandy. And I'm actually going to flip over to the text document so you can see what I have going on here. So hang tight. Okay, so we're just in SMOD 40A, plain old vanilla. We're on D1 Canals 06 is my favorite testing map. And here's what we got. We got our entity section. Then we got a little prop physics here that I've named Sandy. It's a box, and also it's frozen in place so the player can't push it around, etc., etc. Then if you remember in our last intermediate map add video, we talked about the old is-lived triggers. And so we've got one that searches every second for the object named Sandy. And of course, when Sandy dies or when the player breaks it, well, then we call the labeled group Sandy dead, which is right here, which spawns a head crab right where the box is. Very simple scenario, but it should illustrate what we're trying to do here. Let's flip over to the game. Oops. All right, so check it out. Here's how it works. There's Sandy, you hit him, and hey, a head crab spawns. Now, in the last video, you may remember that I mentioned that using the is-live triggers can sometimes have a little delay, and you saw right there that the head crab didn't quite exactly spawn when the box was broken, because the way is-lived works, it checks, I think, every second or so, and so if the player breaks the box on a tick between checks, it will take some time for the trigger to realize, hey, in this case, our box Sandy is no longer with us. Dearly departed Sandy. So let's flip over to the map head here and let's cover our new entity. We're going to get rid of this trigger because we ain't going to need that anymore. And let's make us a new entity here called point server command. This thing's so easy to add into your map adds that you literally don't need an origin or anything like that. But you do need to spell key values correctly. And all you need to do to get this to work is give it a target name. I'm going to call it game_s command. You can name it anything you want. It doesn't have to have a specific name, but it needs to have a name. I always name mine this just for consistency purposes and my OCD or whatever. So let me flip back over to the game now that we have that, and that's good. That's all you need. You don't need anything else to get this to work. Just make sure you save your map add. Let's flip back over to the game now. What this does is it's an entity in the map that you can send inputs to, and it really only has one input. It's called command, and what it does is it basically emulates the player typing a console command. So let's well, let me put it this way. Imagine if somehow through your map add you were able, while the player was playing, to have them open the console and type in some kind of command like, I don't know, SV gravity 0, and you could have your map add set that. You might think, well, that's like impossible. There's no way the player would know how to do that. Well, that's where the point server command comes in. And the one that we're going to look at for map adding, probably the most important one, and I mentioned it a long time ago when we first started talking about triggers, is a little command called instant trig run. Pretty unassuming. You probably thought it had almost no use, but guess what? If you remember, you can use this console command to actually call a labeled group. For example, our labeled group of Sandy dead. it's going to spawn that head crab. And you notice, like, when I punch it in and enter the command, as soon as I exit the menu, there's the head crab. This is going to help you eliminate those is-lived delay times. So, let's flip back over to our Mapadd real quick. I'm going to show you how this works. No longer will you need a trigger to call a labeled group of entities. You can now make any object in the map call them. So let's come up here to our prop physics. We're going to add a new key value. This time it's going to be an output. Real quickly, as a reminder what outputs do, you have the key part, which is the output that you want to use. Then you have a, for the value part, you have a target that you're going to send an input. And sometimes you need to pass a value along. We're going to need that in this case. And then you can set a delay in seconds. And then there's this weird one at the end that's fire once. Generally, 90% of the time for this, it's going to be either a 1 or a -1. But just so you remember, this is how outputs look in Mapadd. So now let's add an output. We're going to, for the output part, we're going to use something called onBreak. Now this is when our prop physics is broken by the player, it fires the onBreak output. We want it, we got to pick our target now. We're going to pick the game S command. That's our point server command, remember? So we want to send an input to that, and our input is going to be called command. I think this thing, the point server command, only has one input, and it's command, and what that does is it tells it, okay, run a console variable. Now for our value, it needs to be exactly what you would put in the console. So in this case, we'll do instant trig run, and then we're gonna put a space, and then we do our labeled group, just like you do it in the console. Let me flip back over there. See exactly what I put there? You could literally just copy it right out of there and drop it in here for your value. Instant trig run, Sandy dead. Now for a delay, we want 0 delay because that's our problem right now. And we'll just put -1 here. That means how many times can this be called? But since the box disappears when it breaks, it doesn't matter in this case. Just put -1 or 1. If you look at all Valve's BSP files, their maps, they always use this -1. So that's what I use. Okay, so now we've added a key value to old Sandy. And again, our output, our target, the input we want to send our target, the value we want to put, which is calling that triggered group right here, the delay time, and how many times we can fire it. I'll just leave this up for one more second so you guys can see it, copy it. Okay, save your Mapadd, and let's swap back over to the game. We're going to restart the map because you always got to do that when you change the Mapadd file. And now check it out. Come over here. There's old Sandy. And as soon as we break it, there's our head crab. I mean, look how awesome that is. And this is going to open up so many possibilities for you. No longer do you need a trigger to call a Mapadd label. No longer does the player have to touch the trigger to call the Mapadd label. No longer do you have to use only a timer to call a labeled group of entities. No, no, no. Now we can have almost any entity in the map spawn a labeled group. It's friggin' awesome, guys. This has so many practical uses, and I think the more you start using this and incorporating it into your Mapadds, the more opportunity for unique gameplay is going to open up for you. Just real quick in summation, going over the pros and cons. The pros, it's easy to use. It can be used for all kinds of things, not just the instant trigger run. I mean, you, like I showed you, you could set the gravity using this thing. Maybe I should show that. Let's do that real quick before I get out of here. we'll do that at the end. You can set any kind of console variable. If you go back and look at the old Outbreak Mapads, this is how in D1 Canals 10, I did the slow motion third person view when the airboat jumps over the Combine Patrol. All thanks to this little point server command guy. Yeah, that's pretty much all the pros. And the only con I can think of is that in these old source engine versions, there is a limit to how many entities you can have, and this would occupy one of those slots. But trust me, like 99.9% of the time, you're not even going to get close to that upper cap. I don't even know what it is. That's how uncommon it is for a map to have the maximum number of entities. So don't worry about that. And yeah, guys, just enjoy. And thanks for watching. And stick around here for like 2 seconds. I'm going to show you how to set 0 gravity on the player, which is pretty nasty. But yeah. Oops. Alright, so all I did was change that value of that command, and now watch if the player like breaks this box. Oh god. What's happened to the gravity?